My Dill slept with my husband a week before we signed the divorce papers. I pretended to know nothing. At the meeting, the lawyer handed me a document denying my rights. I smiled. What I did next, the cheaters ended up homeless. My daughter-in-law slept with my husband a week before we signed the divorce papers. I pretended to know nothing at the meeting, the lawyer handed me a document denying my rights. I smiled. What I did next left everyone in shock. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The afternoon. Sun filtered through the lace curtains of my dining room as I set out the good china for lunch. Sage had called that morning. Her voice unusually tight when she asked if we could talk, just the two of us. Something about her tone made my stomach clench, but I pushed the feeling aside. Sage was my daughter-in-law, Amber's older sister, and while we'd always been cordial, we weren't particularly close. I smoothed my hands over the tablecloth, the same cream-colored linen I'd used for family gatherings for 30 years. At 64 I still took pride in maintaining traditions, in creating a welcoming home. The house felt too quiet with just me rattling around in it. Lately, Damon, my husband of 42 years, had been distant for months, always finding excuses to work late or disappear into his study and wait. Our 35-year-old son was so wrapped up in his marriage to Ember that his visits had become perfunctory at best. The doorbell chimed and I opened it to find Sage standing on my front steps, clutching her purse like a shield. She looked pale, her usually perfect makeup slightly smudged around her eyes, as if she'd been crying. "Nadine, thank you for seeing me," she said. Her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course, dear. Come in. Come in." I led her to the dining room, noting how her hands trembled slightly as she set down her purse. "I made your favorite cucumber sandwiches and that lemon cake you complimented last Easter." She managed a weak smile, but didn't touch the food I'd carefully arranged. Instead, she stared at her folded hands, her knuckles white with tension. "Sage. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." She looked up then, and I saw something in her green eyes that made my blood run cold: pain, guilt, and underneath it all a desperate kind of love. "Nadine, I need to tell you something, and I don't know how to say it without destroying everything." My heart began to pound, but I kept my voice steady. "Whatever it is, we can work through it together." Sage let out a shaky breath, tears pooling in her eyes. "It's about Ember and Demon." The world tilted slightly, but I forced myself to remain still. My hands folded calmly in my lap. "What about them?" "They're having an affair." The words tumbled out in a rush, as if she'd been holding them back for so long they'd built up pressure. "I've known for weeks. I saw them together at that little cafe downtown, the one near Damon's office. They were holding hands, kissing, acting like lovers." I felt something inside me crack like ice breaking on a frozen pond, but my voice remained steady. "Are you certain?" Sage nodded miserably. "I confronted Ember about it. She didn't even try to deny it. She just laughed and said it wasn't any of my business." "But Nadine, the things she said about you," her voice broke completely. "Then what things?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. "She said, you were old and boring, that Damon deserved better. She said, once the divorce was final, she'd make sure you got as little as possible. She's been planning this. Nadine, the whole thing. She married Wade to get close to the family, to the money. She's been working on Demon for months." The room spun around me, but I gripped the edge of the table and held on. 42 years of marriage, a son I'd raised with love and dedication, a daughter-in-law I'd welcomed with open arms, all of it crumbling because of greed and betrayal. "Why are you telling me this?" I whispered. Sage reached across the table and grasped my hand. "Because it's wrong, because you've been nothing but kind to our family, and you don't deserve this, because Wade doesn't deserve to be married to someone who's capable of this level of deception." She paused, wiping her eyes with her free hand. "And because I love my nephew and I can't stand watching Ember destroy everything good in this family." I stared at our joined hands, mine wrinkled and spotted with age. Hers smooth and young. "Does Wade know?" "No, and I don't know if I should tell him. It would destroy him." I pulled my hand free and stood up, slowly, walking to the window that overlooked the garden. Demon and I had planned it together in our early years. The roses were in full bloom, their red petals bright against the green foliage. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful, but underneath, the roots were rotting. "What will you do?" Sage asked behind me. I turned back to her, and something had shifted inside me. The initial shock was giving way to something cooler, more calculating. I'd spent my entire adult life taking care of others, smoothing over problems, keeping the peace, but this wasn't something that could be smoothed over. "Nothing," I said calmly. Sage's eyes widened. "Nothing. I'm going to pretend I never heard this conversation. I'm going to smile and play the devoted wife and mother, and I'm going to let them think they're winning. But Nadine, Sage, dear, some games require patience, and I've been patient for a very long time." I sat back down and poured myself a cup of tea with steady hands. "Tell me, does Amber know you're here?" "No, she thinks I'm at work." "Good. It needs to stay that way." I met her eyes, and she must have seen something there that surprised her, because she sat back slightly. "Can you do that for me? Can you pretend you never told me?" Sage nodded slowly. "But what about Wade? What about your marriage?" I took a sip of tea, letting the familiar ritual calm my racing thoughts. Some battles aren't won by charging in with guns blazing, dear, sometimes you have to let your enemies think they've already won. After Sage left, I sat alone in my dining room for a long time, staring at the untouched cake and sandwiches. The house felt different now, as if the very walls had shifted, every family photo on the mantel, every shared memory attached to the furniture and decorations, all of it tainted by the knowledge of what was happening under my own roof. When Damon came home that evening, I was in the kitchen preparing his favorite dinner, pot roast with carrots and potatoes, the same meal I'd made every Thursday for 40 years. "Smells good," he said, not meeting my eyes as he loosened his tie. "Long day at the office?" I asked pleasantly, as if I didn't know he'd probably spent his lunch hour with my daughter-in-law. The usual. He disappeared upstairs to change, and I continued setting the table. My movements automatic and precise.